For this step, we will paste our image in a layer and lower opacity. We grab the pen tool with a black stroke and round caps. If we just click, we will get an anchor point, but if we click and drag, we can make curved segments. Remember that the less anchor points you add, the better. Why? Because it will be easier to make later modifications and the stroke will be much natural. So that you see, let me show an example. You can make a circle with 4 anchor points, but you can also make it with just 2. Then if you want to modify your circle, it will be much easier if you just have 2 anchor points. Another tip, when you drag an anchor point, you should always do it with the same angle, especially if your drawing is leaning like mine. You will have to be very careful and make everything with the same angle. It will be very useful if you make a grid for guiding. This will also help to make all the letters with the same base and height. We duplicate the guides in order to make both words the same size. If you look closely, my sketch already has horizontal guidelines. Now I just have to go over and add a couple of verticals. When we have our grid done, block the layer. Now when drawing letters, it's preferable to put anchor points on the upper and lower parts of the letter. Let me add a couple of guidelines more, so I can use as a reference for the capital letters. Guides are super useful when making this type of work, so it's better to stop and make them correctly, because else you might regret it. See how it's easier now to make the curves? If your logo is horizontal, it's going to be much easier because if you press Shift while dragging, you will get perfect straight angles. Now let's go on with the hard work. I will make a fast version and then I will go over the mistakes. Another thing to have in mind is that when you modify the curve, we pull the direction points with the direct selection tool. On the curved parts, we cannot make sharp corners, but wherever there is a point like this part of the R, we will make them by pressing Alt and modify the direction points. A lot of letters have common shapes, so if you want, you can duplicate them. But remember to make some modifications to get a bit of a handcraft feel. some of our letters, like the lowercase s, it might be very complicated or maybe even impossible to make it with just 2 anchor points. So the solution would be to add a couple of more in between. When we have our logo trace, it's time to fix the mistakes. In my case, I see that the ampersand has a different angle from the rest of the word, and also that the tail of the S does not feel very natural, so let's fix these mistakes. Once we have our designs digitalized, we can make different versions, trying out different things to see what works better. Remember to make copies of your work, because in case you don't like the changes you've done, you can always go back. I'm going to try out a different type of S, without the upper loop and a bigger bowl. I'm also removing the loop from the E and the O, so they match with the new S. In this new version, I see that the C is too close to the K, so I'm going to separate them a bit. I'm also going to make the tail of the bee a bit smaller. The last test will be making the last test will be making the capital R's tail, as I said when I was sketching. The last thing I want to try out is to make a tail to the capital R. I go over the logo once more and it's time to choose in between the different versions. I'm going to pick the red one because it's the one with the better composition and I like how the letters are made. Anyhow, I'm going to adjust a bit more the B shape. When we're finished with the calligraphic part, we can move on to the isotype. That is the little icon in our logo. We can make it as we did the letters, with anchor points and curves, but I'm going to show you an easier way. With the pen tool, we make anchor points going over the figure with straight lines. And when you're done, click on the stroke with the direct selection tool. and we're going to drag around in them. We can also make it with the round corners options, where you will find in Effects, Stylize Round Corners. Let's add a bit more detail with thin lines. A lot of times we might get blocked and we're not able to see what's wrong with our design. So I recommend you to flip your design and immediately mistakes will pop out, because you've changed your brain's point of view. Now, let's put together all the elements to see if they work and correct if necessary. Save it on a vector format, and it's time to add texture and effects to our design.